Savage 2 is a culmination of all of my favorite genres of video game. It's both an RTS, FPS, and an RPG all in one. The guys at S2 Games really outdone themselves with this game. It is epic. And not just from the graphics, but from the scale of the combat as well. You can have small little duels or skirmishes, but once you make your assault on the enemy's HQ, you expect to see a lot of people rushing at each other. The graphics in this game are superb, especially for a free game. This game did come out quite recently for the most part, so it does look pretty good. While it's not next gen per se, it still looks very, very nice. The animations are fluid, and the textures, reflections, shadows, and shaders are just astounding. But because of the quality of the game, you're going to need a powerful rig to play it. Even I clock out at about, say, 20 or so frames while not running fraps. So, yeah, you can definitely play this game on lower settings, but you won't have the same appreciation for the graphics you're looking at than if you'd have, say, a very powerful computer. The gameplay in Savage can be a little overwhelming in the beginning because of the meager tutorial. Fortunately, though, in-game, you can choose to have a sort of voice hint system that'll explain things to you whenever you try and use them. This really helps you out, considering the fact that you'll be doing most of your learning inside the game as opposed to in the lame tutorial. The meat of the game is the unit gameplay, where instead of being the commander and taking a sort of RTS style approach to the Savage, you're on the ground playing as one of the units. Now, it works kind of like a FPS because most units are able to use ranged attacks, but it's mostly like a TPS because whenever you go out and use your melee weapons, you go out into a third-person perspective. As opposed to being a ranged attack focus like most other shooting games, the focus in Savage 2 is to viciously bash someone with whatever melee weapon you have, be it claws, talons, sword, axe, hammer, whatever. Of course, you also have special abilities to aid you. Spellcasters have some rather nasty spells, while melee units have these special melee attacks of sorts. Most units have a similar counterpart on the opposing faction, but regardless of the similarities between them, they all play very differently. No two units will be the same, for the most part. The way the combat works is rather unique. You have an attack button, a block button, and a sprint button, which allows you to quickly rush into the battle and also dodge side to side from opposing enemies. Quite useful if you're being pummeled to death. The thing about Savage is that whenever you kill someone or do anything really, you'll gain slight experience for what you've done. Eventually, you'll gain experience points, which you could and level up, which you could use to sort of give yourself better attribute points and have access to more powerful items from the shop you can buy stuff from in the spawn menu. Now, the commander perspective is quite different than the unit perspective. The reason being is that the commander doesn't take part directly in the combat, as opposed to in regular RTSs, how the commander usually has control over units. You don't have control over units here, except for a few laborer units. Instead, you have control over the buildings. that are buildable, and over the tech upgrade trees and such. And it may get a little bit boring actually playing as the commander. However, if you it may even be a little bit overwhelming if you aren't familiar with standard RTS conventions, since, like I've said, the tutorial doesn't really do a good job with explaining the basics to you. Regardless of this, however, Savage 2 still has a rather fun gameplay. The community in Savage is good. People focus entirely on the game as opposed to, you know, going off topic with stuff about, you know, your mother or whatever it is. Some kind of insult. The community is nice and is rather varied. You may find a lot of servers in different places. For example, the one I'm playing on at the time is the UK server. One of them, anyways.
Fear the wrath of the horde.
Savage gets a 4 out of 5. You know what? Screw it. Savage gets a 5 out of 5. Though it lacks a tutorial and the beginning may be a little bit overwhelming, it's still very fun and a very rewarding experience to those of you who like RPGs, FPSs, and, of course, RTSs. Good day.